Welcome everyone. We're really happy to have you with us today. I'm going to start by putting a short poll. Great. Well, here I'll go ahead and end the poll so you can get a sense as well of where we're all from today. So we've got some people from the Mid-East of the US, the Great Lakes, the Rocky Mountains, and then a good number from the West. And I'm guessing most of those are from California. Or maybe some other West states as well. Great, well, we'll go ahead and get started. So thank you all so much for joining us on this Tuesday morning. We're really happy to have you with us today. As I mentioned a little while ago, this webinar is designed to be a safe space. So we're asking for folks to not share their video, just to make sure we don't have any issues with Zoom bombers or anything like that. And then any communication that you want to have throughout the webinar, just go ahead and use the chat. Myself, Nayeli Sandoval, Melissa Gersh, and Melissa Gersh will all be monitoring the chat. So we'll make sure to get to any questions or comments that you have. We are recording this meeting. So just if you want to change your name, or if you're not comfortable having that listed, you can do that by clicking the 3 dots next to the box where your name is listed, and you can actually click rename and go ahead and change that. So just feel free to put anything you'd like there. Next, I just want to share with you our agenda for the call. Oh, we already did the Zoom poll, so I'll skip that. So we are really thrilled and honored to have author Beth Tyson joining us today. So the bulk of this presentation and webinar will really be for her to share her expertise and the resources that she's worked with, and then have time for Q&A for all of you to ask her questions. We then will do a quick overview and demo of the KinshipCareCA project. So we'll actually show you our website and platform. And then, of course, if you have any questions about that project, you can ask those later in the presentation. So again, just feel free to do anything to communicate via chat, and we'll make sure to respond to you in a timely manner. So before I introduce Beth, I just want to start us off with a definition. So what is the kinship community? So many children and youth are raised by relatives that are other than their biological parents, both formally in the foster care system and outside of it. So this is how we define the kinship community within the KinshipCareCA project. So now I have the honor of introducing Beth Tyson. So as many of you know, Beth is a therapist, a trauma responsive coach, and a children's book author who specializes in helping kinship families and grandfamilies cope with trauma and loss. She's an activist and a grand family advocate, and she is also a CASA volunteer in Delaware County, Pennsylvania. Beth utilizes a trauma responsive approach to help families and organizations begin the healing process after trauma. She's also the author of a book, A Grand Family for Sullivan. This is a story about a young koala who goes to live with his grandma when his parents are unable to keep him safe. Beth was inspired to create a book for grand families while working as an in-home family therapist for foster and adoptive families. The story addresses Sullivan's feelings of loss, sadness, and anxiety as he learns the truth about why his parents can't take care of him. Sullivan's story is a critical tool for therapists, social workers, teachers, and caregivers to talk about the reasons why children can't always live at home in a child-friendly manner. This story also incorporates coping skills for loss and trauma that children can easily implement in their lives. So with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Beth. So I'm just going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen so that she can share hers.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? And see me okay?
Yep.
Okay. Let's see. Okay. Well, welcome everyone, and thank you for taking the time to be here today to learn how you can help kids who have been exposed to some really adverse experiences in their lives. I just want to make sure that everything is showing up appropriately for you guys, that you can see my screen okay and the presentation slide. So if one of the moderators can let me know if it looks okay, let me know.
Yeah, looks great.
Yeah, it looks fine.
Okay. So today we're going to talk about trauma and some tools that you can use to start helping your family and the children that you love thrive instead of just survive. Because a lot of the time, especially now, we're all spending time in survival mode, but there are some things that we can do to get ourselves out of that and to a more fully lived life. A quick disclaimer that this presentation is for educational purposes only. It's not meant to replace therapy or provide any type of diagnosis. And the topics discussed in this webinar may bring up emotions that make you uncomfortable. You are free to exit at any time. So again, I already had the lovely introduction, thank you, by Claire. And so you know all of this by now, but the last part I want to highlight is that I'm an imperfect human and presenter. And so hopefully this goes smoothly today, but I hope you'll bear with me if we have any snafus. And so I want to talk about trauma. And I'm going to start by asking a rhetorical question, but have you ever played the game Jenga? If you know what the game Jenga is, it's this picture here where this little boy is playing. I like to think of childhood trauma as pieces being removed from the Jenga puzzle. And we all know what happens when the pieces from the Jenga puzzle are removed. And they happen one by one, and eventually the Jenga puzzle falls down and falls apart. And so a lot of times that is what it's like for children who have experienced multiple traumas and loss throughout their early lives. They're born whole. They're born the full tower of Jenga pieces. But as each adverse experience happens throughout their life, a piece of the Jenga puzzle is removed. And with each trauma and each piece that is removed from them, they become weaker, and they fall apart more easily, having tantrums and difficulty with behavior. They're sort of primed now because of these events to not have the same amount of resiliency that other kids may have. And so we want to help parents and educators and anyone who's out there listening today to put those pieces back together so that we can help the children be that whole Jenga puzzle again. So quickly, what is a trauma? Because I think a lot of you may have already heard these terms and know these things. But I want to go over the way that I envision trauma. And I describe it as a deeply distressing or disturbing event that lives on in the body. And there's a great quote, and I don't know who said it, but it's "the issues are in the tissues." Trauma lives in the body, and it's not just an event in the past that took place. It continues on with us. And if it's unprocessed trauma, it can get stuck in the actual tissues of the body. And it can make it very difficult for children and adults to make healthy decisions and function properly in their lives when they have trauma that is stuck in their body. So trauma is a rupture of trust and safety in the world around you, which is a foundation that everybody needs. We all need trusted safety in order to function properly in our lives and in relationships. It changes the way the brain functions. The research is all clear on that when a child has been exposed to any type of trauma, the brain is wired differently, and it sets the brain up to be on high alert or in a state of constant fear of danger. And I like to refer to a model regarding hypo and hyperarousal to help explain this, and I'll go into that in a little bit more detail in the next slide. And what this hyper or hypoarousal of the brain creates is a difficulty in being able to learn and regulate emotions. So I'll go into some more of that on the next slide and give you some more background on that. So I like to call this Mindset Mountain. And it's a visual tool that can help adults and children start to map where they are on this mountain each day. This is something you could do with a child, but you could also do it just making mental notes. If you're a teacher, you can use this as a visual aid in your mind to ask yourself, where is the child on Mindset Mountain? And so what this is a model called the Yerkes-Dodson model of arousal. It was actually developed for people who play sports, and that's where the model came from. Was, at what point does a person who's playing sports become over aroused, and to the point that their performance starts to decline? And what they found was that there's an optimal level of excitement or stimulation or arousal that human beings get to, and then after that point it drops off exponentially in terms of performance. Your performance will drop once the more excited and the more aroused or stimulated that you are. And what we find, and the reason this relates so closely to trauma, is that what we find is that children who have been exposed to trauma are living in that red zone, that hyper aroused state where their brain is constantly on fire, looking for danger, looking for threats, and noticing very small shifts in their environment that could tip them off to any type of danger. And so their trigger is very quick. They've got a quick trigger for these things, anything that signals any type of danger or lack of safety or lack of trust. And when you're living in that state, in the red zone, makes it very difficult to learn in school, to behave, to follow directions, to listen to what you're told. And it makes it difficult to feel at peace and at ease and at comfort. And you'll see in the green area, we call, not just me, but others will call that the window of tolerance. And that's the area where you're feeling at your best. I like to talk about how you feel maybe after you've taken a shower in the morning and had your cup of coffee or your tea or your kombucha or whatever it is that gets you going. That alert but confident and calm, that calm sense of alertness where you're ready for the day, you're ready to get out there and take on the world, but you're not feeling agitated or anxious or fearful. And in that window of tolerance is where we want to try and help get kids who have been exposed to trauma to spend more of their time. And the more time they spend in their window of tolerance, the more opportunity there is to create the neural pathways in their brain that signal safety and comfort and allow them to begin the healing process. So in the blue area, you have low arousal and low performance, and that's called hypoarousal. And then as arousal increases or excitement increases, you move into the green area. So in the blue area, you might be asleep, you might be bored, you might be meditating, you might be just in a really peaceful state of Zen in that area, or you just might be like shut down, turned off. And as excitement starts to build, your performance will start to go up. You'll start doing more things, making your life more productive throughout the day, and going to work, going to school, doing your homework. But if you start to become nervous and overexcited, that is when we see performance drop off exponentially into that fear, panic, and choke area. We all know as adults what it's like to try and do anything when we're feeling nervous or scared. It doesn't go very well. And it's the same thing for our kids. They can't function when their brain is always in the red. And that is why we see so many behaviors. And it's the brain's defense system from this fear state. So children will repeat what is familiar to them. So if they're used to having a chaotic home and they're used to having a lot of fighting going on, and the home they came from was very unstable, they're going to try and repeat that same situation and environment in the next home they're in, whether it's with grandma or a foster family, because what feels familiar also feels safe to a child, even if it's terrible, because uncertainty and change and differences are also very fear-inducing. And so If a child can create a chaotic environment in their new home, that can feel actually familiar to them and more normal, even if it's not normal to us. And they've learned behavior. Through learned behavior, they've developed a fear of relationships. So they've learned that relationships equal danger and that they need to keep an arm's length. And a lot of times kids keep an arm's length from people by lying, stealing, acting out, not following directions. All of those are attempts to keep people at a distance from them so that they can't have their hearts broken again. Because what's really happened to these kids is they've had so much loss in such an early portion of their lives. They've lost everything that was familiar to them. They've lost their loved ones, their parents. They've lost their sense of safety. And so these children are grieving a very ambiguous type of loss where there is no clear ending to it. And that can be one of the most painful types of loss for humans to experience. So what we see is all these behaviors in an attempt not to get hurt again. So there's and then there's also a couple of other things, that how negative attention can be very distracting from emotional pain. So it's easier to be angry and acting out and doing all these things and getting into trouble at school and getting into fights, because all that negative attention, it fills a need for attention, but it fills also a need to distract themselves from the real pain, which is the loss and the trauma and the abandonment and the abuse. So if you're getting in trouble all the time, you don't have much time to think about anything else. And again, the brain is in that hyper or hypo state of arousal where the performance is low. I also want to add that children, when they start to feel these emotions and they're showing you your rage, that can actually be a sign that they're beginning to trust you and to trust that you won't abandon them. So children don't show rage and anger and all of those weaknesses and vulnerabilities to an adult that they don't feel safe enough to do that with. So the fact that you're seeing some of these behaviors means that they're actually probably doing better than you realize, but you need to stick it out and stick through it with them until you can get through to the other side. And I'm not saying that's easy, because it is not easy. But it is a way for them to release some of the built up rage that was inside of them when they were being abused or neglected. They need to release that with a safe adult, and they've chosen you. A lot of times you'll see explosive behavior because of a trigger, and triggers are things in the child's environment that tip them off to feelings of danger, anxiety, or memories of grief or traumatic grief. Most of them are subconscious and unpredictable, but some can be predicted, and so we can prepare ahead of time, which is really good news. And so I have a tool here for you. It's called trigger mapping. And basically what you can do is you can make one of these at home. You can quickly draw one of these if you have just simple pen and paper. So you want to draw a circle and a graph of the year, splitting it up into the different seasons, and then think about all the things that happened to that child within that year, based off the seasons. You know, any terrible events or abuse or removal from a parent. Then you want to think about the five senses and how when a child is triggered, it's usually coming in from the outside. It's usually something, it's tipped off by one of their five senses. So say a child was removed from their parents during the weekend of 4th of July. And, you know, that weekend they were smelling a lot of barbecues outside, and they may have seen fireworks in the sky, and they may have, you know, the weather was warm. And so what can happen is, the next time the child experiences those things, it can trigger the traumatic memories of the loss and the abuse and the removal from their parents, which is often a traumatic experience for kids. And so, you know, this way you can be aware of preparing ahead of time that this time of year is going to be tough for the child, that this time of year is probably going to trigger negative behaviors and difficulties with relationships and outbursts and all that. And when you can be mentally prepared for it, it makes it easier for you to empathize with the child when you see it happening. So instead of being irate and worked up and responding aggressively to the child, thinking like, what's wrong with you? You know, I give you a good home and you're safe here now. You know, why are you still acting this way? You can remind yourself like, oh, okay, this is probably a trigger of some kind. And you can go throughout the year and try and point out all those different times. I've also developed a model called the CARES model. It stands for consent, accept, reflect, educate, and share. And if you take a second to read this little image here, I just adore this. And it's what every child needs, regardless of trauma, and every human being needs, really, especially now. But it says, "I'm afraid," said Rabbit. And the bear says, "What are you afraid of?" "I don't know," replied Rabbit. "I just am." "Then I will sit with you until you're not afraid anymore," said Bear. "We will face it together." And that's a very simple explanation of how to be empathetic with a child, which is what they really need. They need someone who can just sit with their pain and be in it with them and not try to fix it or distract them or punish them for it or take it away, but to just be in it with them. So consent, and I won't read all of this because it's a lot, but consent is the first step in the CARES model, and it means only yes means yes. So when you approach a child who is looking agitated or seems upset about something, you want to approach them slowly, talk calmly, use your safe voice, which is usually a low tone of soft speaking, maybe even whispering. Taking a receptive stance, standing next to them instead of in front of them or over them, or sitting down side by side. Your facial expressions are really important because children read your face more than they hear your words. So you really want to have a caring facial expression. And then you want to ask, is it okay if I stay here with you, or do you need something else right now? So getting that consent that it's okay for you to join them, because a lot of times kids who've experienced trauma have been violated. Their bodies have been violated. And so modeling proper boundaries and how to ask someone for consent is really important with these kids to help them feel safe. So what does your body need? If you get a yes, you know, asking them, what do you think your body needs right now? And if consent is not given, it may be an opportunity to give them a safe space somewhere where they can't hurt themselves, to stay nearby and to be watching over them, but providing a safe space with no sharp objects or anything that might be harmful, and to be ready to enact on your safety plan. And a safety plan could be calling a neighbor, calling a best friend, having someone on speed dial that if you need help, you can get it. You can have someone who might be able to help you de-escalate the situation. Accept is really accepting the child's feelings and experiences unconditionally. So even though sitting with a child's pain is very difficult, that's a critical part of the CARES model, is that you really need to be in a place of emotional neutrality yourself so that you can accept whatever feeling is coming at them without trying to distract, and you can point out to them that, you know, these feelings are acceptable. All feelings are acceptable. There are no good and bad emotions. There are uncomfortable emotions and there are comfortable emotions, but there are no good and bad feelings. Reflection is the next step, which is reflecting how they look and how their body looks to help them learn about their emotional reactions and have them build on their emotional intelligence. When a child knows how they're feeling and they connect words with feelings inside their body, it can help them make sense of what's going on. Educating them. So, you know, psychoeducation is a huge part of therapy, but it's a tool that anybody can use. So the more you know about this type of experience and the more you know about emotions, the more you can share that with them and educate them about how our bodies have an urge when we're scared or angry. We want to run, we want to fight, we want to maybe freeze. Some people fawn. That's a new trauma reaction, which is about compliance, just always complying with whatever anybody asks them to do because they are just scared to death to do anything else. So when we feel scared and we feel angry, our bodies go into this, they have this urge to do one of these things, and it's not a conscious decision. So when we can notice that and choose a different response, one that won't hurt ourselves or other people, we can walk the child through, what do you think would be a fair option in this situation, instead of, this is what you need to do. It's all about getting engagement from the child and empowering the child. So not just telling the child, okay, well, take a couple deep breaths and calm down. That's not going to work very well. You need buy-in. You need them to feel like they have control and ownership over how they're going to manage their emotions. So asking them, what do you think would be fair right now? Or what do you think would help your body calm down, instead of assuming that you know the answer. And then sharing, being vulnerable with children is the last step in the model, is telling them, I feel really scared too when this or that happens, or I felt really scared as a kid when I was personally terrified of thunder and lightning storms. I had my house was struck by lightning, and I had a phobia for years of thunder and lightning. And so I know what it feels like to have that terror inside of you. And so, sharing a vulnerable moment with a child can be a miraculous thing, and it helps them understand that they're not the only ones going through this. So that's the CARES model. And what happens is when you use the CARES model, you move the child out of the red zone and into their window of tolerance. And that's always the goal. We want to help kids spend more time in the window of tolerance so that they are continuously building the neural pathways in the green area, and sort of diminishing the neural pathways that have been built in the red area, rewiring the brain. So I like to call some of the things we do climbing to safety, because it's mindset mountain. So climbing to safety is locating with the child where they are on mindset mountain. Are they at the bottom? Are they at the top? Blue, green, red. Using the CARES model of trust and problem solving ideas together, and having it be child-led. So children, again, need the agency and empowerment. So you want them to be coming up with their own ways to help themselves. And then when trust and safety increases, stress hormones decrease and arousal moves back into that window of tolerance. And this is called a corrective emotional experience. It is the hope that we have that we can do something to help our children heal. So corrective emotional experiences is a term you may not have heard of, but what it means is that if you had a parent or somebody else who abused you, you have that emotional experience stored in your brain. And every time you have an experience with an adult when that doesn't happen, when they do the opposite of what you expect them to do, when they're consistent and stable, when they're there for you, when they empathize with you instead of abusing you, when they get you, feeling known and understood, that starts to correct the previous emotional experience that took place with the other unsafe adult. And that is the goal. As a parent and as a caregiver, creating more corrective emotional experiences will help children to heal their brains. Common pitfalls, and if someone could just tell me where I am on time real quick, because I know I might be talking too long.
Have about 5 more minutes, I think.
I do have about 5 more minutes. Okay. So, okay, some common pitfalls. I'm not going to talk through too much of this, but if you can take a look at it quickly or even take a snapshot with your phone, that might be something you can come back to. We will be sending this out as a recording as well, assuming that technology cooperates. So you can look at some of these common pitfalls later on. This is just a reminder of some trust building skills: modeling appropriate behavior, keeping your word, being honest, respecting boundaries, getting that consent, using soft tones of voice, and preparing them ahead of time for anything that's going to be coming. So even with my own daughter, I wake up in the morning and I talk her through what the day is going to look like. First, we're going to do this, then we're going to do that, then we're going to go here, and then we're going to go there. And the younger the child is, the more information or the smaller amount of increments of time you want to explain it to them. So you want to sort of chunk it together for them and just maybe tell them about this morning, what you're doing this morning. Then as afternoon approaches, start talking about afternoon. And lastly, I do want to talk about my book, because the book is a tool to help people climb mindset mountain back to that state of optimal arousal. It's a tool to help grandparents or kinship families discuss their truth and reality. And so that's trust building. And it's a mindfulness tool that can be implemented for children with anxiety. Within the story, it walks Sullivan through how to manage his big emotions, because he's feeling pretty upset and pretty worried and angry about the fact that he can't live with mom and dad anymore. And he lashes out at grandma in the middle of the story. And instead of grandma reacting, she offers to give him some time, and she doesn't punish him or attack him back. And because she gives him that space and holds that space for him, he's able to meet another little child at the park who's been through something similar to him, and learn about some coping skills using mindfulness and actually the clouds in the sky, and how we can watch the clouds. We can watch our feelings like we watch the clouds, that feelings come and go, and that they don't stay very long. And that, if we can just sit and let the clouds hang over us, the sad clouds or the angry clouds hang with us for a while, eventually they do pass. And it's a really sweet story about how the two of them find a way through this really hard situation to feel connected and safe. And Sullivan has the opportunity and the bravery and the courage to have that hard conversation with grandma and learn why he's unable to live with mom and dad. So I just want to play this little video, because this is a little girl. This is a grand family that I love and adore, who has become a close friend of mine since writing this book. And you'll see.
Thank you, Miss Beth. For my Sullivan. For my Sullivan. Do you like Sullivan? Yeah. Yeah. And do you like the book about Sullivan? Yeah. Yeah, that's a great book. Thank you, Miss Beth. Thank you, Miss Beth. Bye.
So yeah, as you can see, that's just, there's nothing better than seeing that smile on that little girl's face and just feeling understood. And that's the main point of the book, is that a child that reads the book feels that they're not alone, that they go to sleep knowing they're not the only ones in this really, really heartbreaking situation, and that there's someone who's been through it before and they can get through it too. And so it really is a message of hope, and it's a realistic story, but it's a hopeful story. And I'm probably out of time, so I just want to kind of slide through a couple of these. I talk more about, if you want to learn more about emotional enrichment skills for children, you can join my Emotominds Facebook group. It's just, I think you could just search Emotominds and you should be able to find it. You can also find free resources on my website, BethTyson.com. You can email me, and you can find me on social media. I have a list of resources here that would be helpful to grandfamilies, kinship families, foster families, or anyone working with children to understand some of these concepts more deeply. And lastly, it's been a pleasure to share this time with you. And I hope that it was helpful. And I hope that you take something away from this that will help the children you love start thriving instead of just surviving. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Beth. That was a wonderful presentation. We can take, the next 10 to 15 minutes to answer any questions that anyone in the audience has. So any questions you want to raise with Beth, feel free to just type them in the chat, and we can just have a conversation to learn more.
Thank you, Cher.
We have a few already.
Okay, great.
What is the best approach in dealing with kids who are living with relatives but continue to visit with mom, dad, and struggle? What advice do you provide for post-visit conversations?
Yes, so this is a question I get asked on every webinar. This might be the focus of my next book. I'm planning to write another one, and I'm planning to focus it on how to cope after visits, because this is something I saw in my work as well as with people now since I wrote the book. And what I want to say is that knowing ahead of time and being prepared mentally that after a visit, things are going to be tough, most likely. And really wanting to provide that safety, that safe space for the child, that safety and that holding space, because they can't hold all of those hard emotions. It's just too much for a child. They only understand things in small bits and pieces. Even concepts like death take children years to wrap their minds around. And so you really want to try and be as honest and straightforward with them, but in age-appropriate ways, so that you don't overwhelm the child with maybe too much information, but you're also not keeping things from them. So, you know, I don't know what the specific issues that are going on, but I think the most important thing is being in a centered place yourself before the child comes home. So whether that means spending some time, you know, journaling, or spending some time listening to soothing music, or doing, or even, you know, talking to someone, connecting with someone who knows what you're going through, so that you are mentally prepared when the child comes home, because you are their North Star. And if you are regulated, then the child will learn how to regulate themselves and their emotions through you. So it really is important that you're taking good care of your own mental health and your own emotional well-being, and thinking about how to approach how they're experiencing whatever they come home with. They may tell you they hate you. They may say, I want to go home. I don't want to be here anymore. All of those things, if you keep it in a frame of mind that this is a child who's hurting, and not take it personal, and do what you can to be soothing and help them calm themselves with sensory activities, a lot of sensory activities. I just actually posted a whole not program, but like a whole blog in my Emoto Minds group this morning about creating comfort spots or comfort corners at home for kids, and how that is a place that you can spend time with them when they come home from visits. And this is not a calm down place. I've really, that word irks me, calm down, because I feel like it triggers kids and adults too. Nobody likes to be told to calm down. And so if you can call it something else, like a soothing spot, or the chill chair, or something that is more positive than the calm down spot, which already sounds like you've done something wrong, right? So I encourage families to have sensory activities there. And you can, if you join my Emoto Minds group, you'll see a bunch of ideas and tools that you can use to create a really simple space at home for kids. Hope that was helpful. Thanks for a great question.
So we have an attendee from London who's joined us. I hope I pronounced your name correctly, Yeliz. And she says, I would like to hear your opinion on the suitable starting point with a child who is missing a parent, for example, a child without a dad. Approaching a child using these sensitive techniques may not work immediately because we are not what the child wants. He wants a dad, and we cannot produce that for him. Please advise us how we can help this type of child to feel loved and accept the reality. Thank you.
Good question. And hi, Elise. I hope I'm pronouncing that right as well. Her and I have connected, I think if it's the same person, several times over Facebook. So I really appreciate your question and your support. So no, of course you can't be dad, right? You can't replace that missing person, and nobody ever really can. And I think it's about trying to accept that instead of pushing that away and trying to fill that hole for the child by saying, you know, oh, but you know, this or that, or making up other alternatives or other relationships that are, well, you have your grandfather, well, you have your uncle, what about him? No, that's not gonna work. It's about accepting and sitting with that pain. You don't have your dad. That is really hard. And letting that resonate, and whatever feelings come up, being okay. Those feelings are okay. trying to talk around the issue isn't going to help. They need you to validate that for them. You don't have your dad. That's really sad. So that's a starting point, and I hope that helps.
Thanks, Beth. We have another one. Are there any resources for tutors working with kids who have experienced trauma, especially now that we are providing tutoring online or via Zoom?
There's lots of resources for trauma, but I'm trying to think. I wish I knew more about like your specific situation to answer that. Maybe can whoever asked that question, could you shoot me an email and tell me a little bit more about the type of work that you're doing, so I can give you some pointed, I don't want to just give you some general answer, and give you specific tools that would be helpful in that situation. You can contact me on my website, bethtyson.com.
Okay, well, that's about it from the chat that I can see, but we can continue to take questions. We'll have another Q&A period momentarily.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Beth. Thank you, Melissa. So we've got 13 minutes left, so we're thinking we just want to make sure to show you briefly the KinshipCareCA website and program, because this program is part of a statewide effort to really support kinship caregivers and families and youth. So we're so happy to have Beth here. It's her expertise and resources that she shares that really make the project that we are working on come to life. So I'm just gonna take about 5 minutes of your time to briefly show you. Hold on just a moment, get my screen shared. I think this is it. Are you all able to see my screen now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you. Wonderful. So some of you may know that we have a program, it's called KinshipCareCA.org. You can see the website right here on the screen. And as Beth mentioned, as I'm sure many of you on the call know, kinship families are such an important part of our community across the state of California and around the world. And so our project through United Ways of California with KinshipCareCA.org, it's designed to be a free one-stop navigator to meet the immediate needs of kinship caregivers and foster youth and families. And it helps you locate resources and services, access benefits, whatever that individual or family may need, via our online search and web portal. There's also 24/7 live help where you can talk to a kinship navigator or specialist that really understands the needs and the resources that the state of California has to offer. So I won't take up too much of your time, but I do want to just take you to the website so you can see it. And then you are, of course, welcome to access this on your own at any time. So the website is KinshipCareCA.org. Oh, I didn't quite remember. I'm going to do an incognito window so you can see what it's like for the first time that you visit it. KinshipCareCA.org. Okay, are you still able to see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. Sometimes it switches screens on me. So this is our website, and if you see down here, you know, any new site you visit, you'll often get a notice that says we use cookies, but I like to show this because we have a great explainer. So this is a really good resource for anyone that's brand new to the site and wants to learn more about how it works. You can use this page. So I'll take you just quickly to the home page and want to share that we start with our guided search, and everything about this site, you know, the photos, the layout, the content has all been curated to meet the needs of our families, and we've done countless focus groups throughout the state to get input on how to design this site, and we are continuing to take feedback and suggestions. So while this is live and ready to use, we look at it as a iterative approach, and we're always making improvements. So if any of you on the webinar have ideas for how to make this a more accessible and inclusive and comprehensive resource for our families, we'd love to get your feedback. So this is the guided search page, and here you can identify as if you're looking for resources for yourself or your family, or if you're a service provider and maybe you're looking for resources for one of your clients. And then here you can enter your zip code or the city that you're in, and you can see resources that are available near to you. Down here we have just a quick definition of what KinshipCareCA.org is. So as I mentioned, it's really about connecting individuals and families to services that they need, and then also having 24/7 care and support from kinship navigators. This bar at the bottom, this kind of goes along with what I was saying earlier. Did you find what you're looking for? If you click no, you can give us any feedback. So maybe there was a specific resource you hope to find you didn't see, you had trouble navigating the site, whatever you may have, you're always welcome to submit feedback here, and this will go directly to 6 different individuals that all work on the back end of this. So we're monitoring this daily by the hour, and really appreciate all of the input and support that our community gives us. So this is the homepage. I'll just also show you this Get Live Help, and this is available on every page of the site. But if you want to speak directly with a kinship navigator or specialist, you can just call this phone number, and that way you can speak on the phone, because we know some of our families might struggle with navigating the internet, so we want to make sure they also have live help. So I'll just show you one search just so you can get the idea. So down here we have what's called a guided search, so you can click on a specific resource and then drill down to see more specific categories. So maybe you're looking for job finding assistance, financial literacy, energy, whatever it might be. I'll just click on one so you can kind of see how the flow is. But again, we welcome you to explore this on your own time, and then let us know, how it works for you. So instead of going through all of the pages, because I know we're running low on time, I do want to just pause right now and see if we have any questions just about this project. I'm looking at the chat. I don't see any questions. So Melissa, if you see any questions from your end, just let me know. The resource library here is where we list a lot of really important and key resources that are offered throughout the state of California. So this is where we'll work with Beth and others to make sure that we have all the most up-to-date and useful resources around trauma-informed care and response. But this is just a great resource page if you want to learn general information about what's available for our families. We have a blog that's updated regularly that features kinship heroes. So our most recent blog is about Alliance for Children's Rights, where you can meet a kinship hero. So this is just a great way to learn more about some of the local resources and amazing individuals that work in this space. We of course have information about COVID-19. We know that now more than ever, these resources are vital for our kinship families. So we're working to update this regularly. And then if you want to stay connected and learn more as this project progresses, this is a great page. This is a way that you can actually embed a link to the KinshipCareCA.org site on your website. There's also flyers here that you can download. And then we'll be sure at the end of this webinar to send out an email with a recording of the webinar, as well as links to all of our social media posts. So Melissa and several members of our team are always updating our Twitter and Facebook, Instagram, and other platforms as well. So we'd love to stay in touch with you if you're open. I think that's a pretty good overview. I see Nayeli put in the chat, you can always email us at kinship@unitedwaysca.org. That's very true. We love to hear from you. So that's one option. And then again, you can also email us directly through the site, whatever is easier for you. Great. So I will go ahead and stop sharing the website and go back to our slide deck. And we'll, just take the last few minutes to see if folks have any questions.
Thanks so much, Claire, for sharing, walking us through the website. We encourage everybody to go and find resources that they need to support your kinship families. There were a couple questions that came in around supporting teenagers and trauma. So I'm going to try to make them into one question. So the question is, how do you help teenagers process their trauma, and what books would you recommend for them?
Teenagers. There are a lot of great books out there. There's one called, I think it's called the Anxiety and Phobia Workbook, really helpful for teens to understand what is happening in their bodies around anxiety, because anxiety is a lot of the root cause of the behaviors and the issues that you're seeing. So really psychoeducation for teens about how their brain works, why they're feeling the way they're feeling, really getting them familiar with the sensations in their body and helping them understand that although it is very uncomfortable and disturbing at times, that it is also a completely human response to what they've been through. And that validation and just knowing that there's not anything wrong with them, or that they're not crazy, or any of those things, can be really soothing and healing for a child, because they just don't understand it. They don't understand mental health concepts. It's not taught to them in school, unfortunately. And helping them understand the way their brain works is really going to be a powerful move for them. And then you want to be doing trust building with them. You always want to be keeping your word with them and being honest with them as much as you can. Also preparing them for changes in their lives. Don't blindside them with things. And avoid using removal of important items for kids who have experienced trauma and loss, because the removal, those consequences where you're removing things, can trigger their loss and grief and their anger. And so what you can do is add things on as a consequence. So, instead of, I'm taking away your iPad, or you're this or you're that, or I'm taking away, you're not going to soccer practice tonight because of this or that. You want to add something on, add chores on, add responsibilities on that they might not love to do. So you're adding on something instead of taking something from them when they've already lost so much. There's also a tool called the trust, I think the trust box, something like that, that I've used with kids. I don't have a good name for it yet, but basically you can make a little safety box where they are allowed to put any thoughts or questions in that box, and you will not judge or punish them for it. And they can put them in the box, and then you can agree to look at it once a week and then respond to them via the box, or you can respond to them in person, whichever they feel more comfortable with. But this gives them a safe place to tell you things without fear of retribution and without fear of punishment. Some really important things that might be necessary for them to get out and to share with you, but they're just too scared. So, doing these things that are going to build attachment, build trust, sense of safety, and also helping them understand what's going on in their body and their brains around trauma and anxiety.
Thank you, Beth, for fielding that question. There's another one. As a professional working with children and families, are there tools that can support a child to rewire their brains into feelings that they have not experienced? and they do not know how to deal with such as love and peace in a long-term environment. So how do you support that?
So I think what you're saying is like maybe a child who has no concept of peace or love, has never experienced those types of things. Is that what you're?
Yeah, I think that's what the question is getting to.
And tools for professionals, I think she said. I'm just trying to think. I know, I mean, some of the experts out there on trauma, like Dan Siegel, he wrote The Whole Brain Child, along with Tina Payne Bryson, and they have some really like existential type of work that they do with consciousness and helping people that have been exposed to extreme trauma use something called the Wheel of Awareness. So that might be something you look into as a professional, understanding, learning about the Wheel of Awareness by Dan Siegel, and implementing that within the work that you're doing. If you send me an email or reach out to me on my website and provide some more details for me, I'd be happy to give you like a customized answer to that question and go into more detail with you. Thanks for asking.
Thank you, Beth. I'm not seeing any other questions unless Melissa, you're. Or Claire.
Yeah, I'm not seeing any more either. On the screen, you can see some of the emails if you would like to get in touch with anyone after this call. So admin@bethtyson.com is where you could reach Beth Tyson, or there's also a link to her website here. And then if you have questions about our KinshipCareCA project, kinship@unitedwaysca.org is the best place to reach out to us. Yeah, so and if there are no more questions, I think we can go ahead and close. So just want to thank you all again for taking the time to be here with us this morning, and a special thank you to Beth for sharing your expertise and your stories with us. It's been a really informative webinar. As far as our next steps, within the next few days, we will send out a copy of this recording. You can also access it through our Facebook account. It's currently being streamed live, and there will be a recording there as well. And yeah, please let us know if any questions come up or feedback over the coming weeks. We'd love to stay in touch. And I think with that, we'll go ahead and close the webinar.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Can the three of us stay on for a minute just to recap?
Sure. Yeah, that's a great idea.